Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of iZombie as well as the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I have to say about this week's episode of iZombie, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But the first thing we're going to talk about is iZombie. So in this episode, kind of I guess, what was the term to use? Mindfulness. Dude named Topher was killed. It was a very interesting investigation because you end up finding out a lot about Topher, that Topher was actually part of like some big, he was a money bag. Like he made a crap ton of money, but then like things changed and he ended up becoming this mindful person, kind of almost giving up on his, materialistic needs in this world. Kind of, it's almost like I guess almost a Buddhist approach to things, I guess, a kind of mindset about life, kind of saying these kind of, I'm sure some people might think of him as kind of like cheesy mantras of just like, oh, like you should kind of, put it into an almost poetic way of how you should approach life. A very interesting thing about this episode I didn't even think about really. I think this is the first time that's ever happened in an iZombie episode. Liv did have a vision the entire episode. I don't think that's ever happened before, mainly because because the guy because he had such a state of mind that where it's like, I don't know if it's really ever been brought up. Maybe it was probably brought up in like the first season, but what really kicks, I guess there's like synapses in her brains that kind of kick into overdrive, that kind of start tapping into the memory part of the brain she ends up devouring. But maybe because he has such a peaceful mind, like there's no triggers that kind of, cause like whatever chemical things happen, sciencey stuff that makes it happen. So, I mean, I don't know. Like at the end of the day, I don't know. That's it at the end of the day. I mean, really quickly about the case, it's actually interesting when you actually break it down. Like the case wasn't even, like, to me it seems like the case wasn't even that, like, I feel like the cases are usually like half the episode, but I feel like this episode was like, the case was like a very, very small part of it, at least to my knowledge. I did like that conversation, like, because basically Clive and Liv were outside obviously arguing a little bit because they're staking out, and then like the cops, like a cop parts of like, oh, Babino? Oh yeah, some lady was calling talking about some pimp and his hooker were in the car yelling at each other. And it's like, okay. I think even Liv later on is like, yeah, I can understand why you'd kind of think like that. It's like, no, I don't get how you would jump to that conclusion, but okay. But I like the twist that basically one of the dudes, his name is Devin, who works at that place, ended up getting framed for it because it's his shoes and everything. And it turns out that obviously the first suspect they had was this dude named Mitch. Mitch got caught up in all this stuff and basically he went to jail for like 5 years. Obviously there was a homeless guy at the beginning of the episode who gave a false name, or a fake name. I don't remember his name. But then later on it's like, oh yeah, you find out. I like the twist. It's like, oh yeah, that guy at the beginning, because I didn't realize it. That was actually Mitch. Like he had gotten out of prison like 2 weeks prior. So they ended up getting his mugshot and everything and realizing, oh, that was you the entire time. Obviously, the fingerprints from the bottle that Clive took from him and threw away. Like, he sent them on a wild goose chase because basically he was pissed at Topher, mainly because we ended up finding out that Topher ended up confessing to him that he was the one that sent Mitch. He's the one that ratted him out and ended up getting him sent to prison for 5 years is what this all was kind of all about, so that was the main motive. I'm sure money, considering the business and everything, money and everything being the main contributor to all of this is probably played some role in it too. I mean, the reason why Topher turned him in the first place is because Topher was a very different person back then. He's like, yeah, me back then, I only cared about money, so that's why I did what I did, and I apologize for it. So, I mean, trying to make amends ended up kind of leading to him getting killed, so. Now, on the other side of things, we have Blaine's dad making a return. And there was an interesting conversation between him and Blaine. And obviously, Blaine not knowing who he is just like his dad's just kind of like, oh, yeah. Until Peyton shows up, it's like, yeah, this is your dad. He's like, oh, man. Oh, yeah, sure, I'll sign over this paperwork, Dad. Like, yeah. Like, so, maybe take some time, talk, hang out, what. It's like, yeah. It's kind of interesting when you look at it because it's like, obviously real Blaine hates his dad. And it turns out his dad, obviously we knew before his dad wasn't the biggest fan of him, but now we hear it even more in this episode that basically it was like a situation. It was like, oh, tell you a story. Well, how about a time when you were 11 years old? Basically Blaine ended up stealing his mom's earrings or something and ended up selling them to some, I think basically he sold it to someone his dad referred to as a junkie or whatever. And it was like, and that was the moment I found out just how disgusted I am with you. And it's like, wow, like, should a father really be talking about his son like that? I guess in his mind, it's like, oh, you were a piece of scum from the very beginning, Blaine. It's not like you grew into this piece of scum. You were always scum. And it's like, crap, dude. And even Peyton was kind of looking like, ooh, kind of like heartbroken about that, like the way he was being treated. And that was something I was wondering too. Like, obviously at the beginning of the episode, you see her kind of having drinks with Blaine. And he's obviously playing the piano and everything. So he's like, I literally got this gig because the guy that was over there playing originally, he literally died. Like, he literally died over there. Like, he was in the middle of a song, had a stroke and died. And they heard me kind of do my thing. And it's like, oh, here, I can come here now and, well, do my thing. And so it was interesting. I was like, why are you so, like, nonchalant about it? I mean, granted, he did save your life and everything, so there's that. Then there's obviously the Ravi side of things. Ravi's still bothered by everything, and he has a conversation with Peyton that did not go the way he wanted to, which, to be fair, he was in the wrong in that situation because he did a half-ass apology. He was like, yeah, I'm sorry. I've just been kind of mixed up in everything. It's just like, you know, certain things kind of play out in my head. And she's like, what kind of things? And he's like, well, you know, kind of adult film type of thing between you and Blaine. Kind of like, I can't help but imagine you and Blaine being together because it, you know, like, you know, I know we said we'd be friends and everything, but it's like, you know, on some level you could argue, he's like, well, I'm trying to look out for you because Blaine's not a good guy. But at the same time, it's like, no, you're jealous and everything, and it's bothering you. And it's like understandable, like, especially after everything that went down last season, especially with the fact is that he's the one that saved her. He was there to be the shoulder she could cry on. Like, but the thing is, Ravi did have chances. He had chances, but he was so caught up in his own BS that he wasn't there for her. She literally called him, left him a message, be like, hey, I need your help, which we never really got a response as to what that was about. It was something she had found out about, and it seemed like it was kind of bothering her. Maybe that's something we'll see going forward, but for now, it just seemed like it wasn't brought up this episode. Maybe I missed it last episode. I don't know. But nevertheless, Peyton kind of goes off on him. It's like, okay, oh, so you came here you came here to apologize, or did you come here because you wanted me to apologize? It's like, the fact of the matter is, I've beat myself up over it countless times already. Last thing I need is you hit me with it again. Like, I've already, like, punished myself enough for it. I don't need you to add guilt to it. The fact of the matter is, it's like, at the end of the day, this has nothing to do with you. This is between me and Blaine, and your opinion means it's irrelevant. And the fact of the matter is that, because for her, it's like, Blaine was a different person when she met him, because Blaine, to her, she met Blaine, was like, oh, Blaine, this is the guy who's willing to stand up to Mr. Boss. He's the only one willing to do it. And then afterwards, that's when she found out about who he really is. So, you know, I think that's why her and Blaine are clicking now, because when she looks at Blaine now, she sees the Blaine that she thought he was to beginning with. He's the Blaine she thought he was. So I'm thinking that is kind of what it makes it seem like there might be something there. But at the same time, it also feels like there might just be simply a friendship type of thing too. So, and coinciding with that, we do have the whole Major situation in this episode, which sucks big time, that the side effects are kicking in from the first cure. For Major. I guess just because it's like, I guess depending on how long you were a zombie before you took the cure and stuff like that. Because like Blaine was obviously a zombie a lot longer than Major when he originally took it. Plus, you know, probably different body types too, depending on your metabolism and stuff like that, how long it takes for the cure to kind of completely break down in your body, I guess. But now he's starting to see side effects, and now he's got even less time. It seems like he might even have like only a couple weeks left. Obviously, this entire, like, he's got to make sure he does a lot more. Like, he's got to find Natalie, which he got a lead in this episode, but he isn't really able to follow up on it like he wants to. But he's trying to follow up on it because he needs to. Because he ends up learning from Blaine, like, oh yeah, this is someone that might have her captured and everything. Because he's even asking Blaine, he's like, do you know how you felt before you took the second cure? Which he's like, no, I don't. And so for Major, it's kind of sad when you look at it, because like Major's kind of happy and trying to live it up and everything. He's meeting with his new buddy Justin. Kind of kicking ass at, obviously sucking at first, but eventually kicking ass at that Fillmore Graves training thing, taking everyone down. Everyone was like, yeah, go Major. It's like, Everyone was proud of him and everything. But it's because for him, it's like it kind of puts things in perspective for him, because it's like I guess he never really thought about death that much, and that's kind of like any person. Like, no one really thinks about death, you know? Some people obviously more so than others, but no one really thinks about like, oh, this could really be my last day. Especially because, well, considering he's a zombie, I guess, like, it makes it even less so, I guess. But still, like, even in that situation, it's like, oh, obviously death is still possible for a zombie and everything, but it puts it in a more confined time frame, because it's like, obviously with life is unpredictable. You can die at any moment, but now it's like there's a clear cut, like, oh, you've got a couple weeks left until you die. So it's like, now it's like, okay, what we need to do is test out the third cure, which we have to determine, obviously, because obviously the third cure can possibly recover memories, but we've used it on mice. So we haven't tested it on humans. Like, oh, why don't we test it on Blaine? Which Blaine at first is like, yeah, I'm not going to do it. And it's understandable. Blaine's like, I hear all the crap all the crap I did when I was like before, like, with all my memories. It's like, I don't want to be that person again. And, you have Peyton kind of sticking up for him. It's like, it's okay, you don't have to. But you have Ravi going off on him. Like, dude, no, you're a selfish prick. The fact of the matter is, everything happened because of you. The fact is that even Major being in this situation, he's in this situation because of you. Because Major got caught up in all this because all the kids that were important to him that were killed off by Blaine. It's like, you've done nothing. You've killed a lot of people and everything, which Peyton goes off on him. It's like, why are you doing this? Why are you treating him? Once again, it's like, are you kidding me? This is Blaine we're talking about. Mass murderer Blaine, willing to kill people just to make a profit. And she's like, what is, and then eventually he lets it spill. It's like, because I'm in love with you. I love you, and I don't, basically it's like, I don't want to see you around this guy. He's such a bad guy, and you're just not willing to see it. You see the good in him, but it's also because I love you. Finally able to speak what was on his mind the entire time. Sadly, that got completely screwed up later on in the episode when him and Dr. Cobbs, or is it Cops? Either way, she just said, call me Caddy. So him and Caddy got together. I was hoping that was not the case, but when he answered the door in a robe, and she's like, are you drunk? I was like, oh, please don't tell me you did it. Ravi, don't. And it's like, there's a moment. It's like, because she ended up bringing up something. She was like, kind of correlating with a point I brought up earlier in the episode. The reason why all this hasn't worked out is because Ravi hasn't been there for her. She needed him. Like, you're supposed to be my friend, and now you're telling me you love me and everything. It's like, I care for you too. Like, I have feelings for you too. But like, the one thing that's kept us apart is you. You've been caught up in your own BS, and you just haven't been willing to just move past it to be with me. It's like the whole Blaine situation. It's a mistake. I recognize that. But even then, I've given you opportunities to be there. To, like, we could sit down and talk, but you haven't been wanting to. You've been, his ego's too hurt. It's just like, oh, like, the fact of the matter is we broke up and everything, but it's like, now, it's like you were with Blaine and he was your hero and everything. It's like, like I said, Ravi messed up bad. And then you have the situation where it's like, it gets worse because you see that, Peyton finds out about it too, and he's like, I didn't know where we stood and everything. And it's like, don't tell a woman you love her and then go back around and then sleep with someone else. You don't do that, dude. Because now he's ruined any chance he's ever had to making things work with Peyton. I mean, you're so worried about her and Blaine. Like, I mean, truth be told, you're probably going to push her even closer to Blaine. I mean, especially because Blaine was like, I mean, maybe not. Because, I mean, Blaine is in a situation where he's like, no, you know what? I am going to do it. It's the right thing to do. And he ends up taking the cure. And so he will be getting his memories back. Granted, even Ravi was like, that might take a while. So, Major at the end of the day was kind of like, you know what? No, because it is me who's worried about this. At the very least, I have to do everything I got to do before I end up taking the second cure. And then we'll go from there. Like, I will have to be the ultimate guinea pig. I mean, there's always a chance that it's like, oh yeah, like, obviously it won't do anything, but there is a slight chance that it can kill you. So, I mean, the third cure in particular, but like I said, because that's the big struggle between it. It's like, obviously taking the first cure means you will die. Taking the second cure means you will lose your memories, but it's the only way to save you from anyone that's taken the first cure, which I don't think there's any of the first cure left, but still. Like, if this works out, if the third cure pans out, it's a permanent cure for zombieism without there being an issue. But even then, now that I'm sure is going to, like, now I'm sitting here thinking about it, that's going to turn into a storyline in of itself, because I haven't thought about that. It's like, how is Fillmore Grave, a company pretty much founded like mainly mixed of zombies. How are they going to feel about a cure for zombieism? It's like, no, we're zombies. We take pride in being zombies. We like being zombies. We're not going to go back to being who we were. We weren't anything special then. We are now. We have our, like, I'm much happier as a zombie than, obviously it's a choice, but then again, it might not be a choice for them later on. If the world finds out about zombies and that there's a cure for zombies, you know, it might turn into a situation where it's like, oh yeah, three roads. You stand up and fight as a zombie, you get killed for being a zombie, or you cure yourself, which in some forms could be considered a death anyway. That's kind of the whole notion of the second cure. It's like, oh, like losing your memories, doesn't that kind of mean you kind of die anyway? Because I mean, obviously someone isn't just their memories, but it's like, that's what made you who you were. No matter how much of a scumbag Blaine was and how much of a bad guy he was, Blaine was Blaine because of all his memories and everything he remembers and everything he experienced. I'm definitely interested to see how things correlate going forward with his dad, especially when he gets his memories back. Because his dad ends up starting his own operation with Donnie, and basically they have the mentality of like, hey, obviously we want to step it up, make it so that we kind of handle things a little bit differently than Blaine. Like, we are, like, the only people that are walking in here that are human are going to be food. Like, we're not going to have like any human clientele to kind of make this seem legit. Like, obviously you have someone, Blaine kind of had a human clientele to kind of make his business obviously a little more legit, and when now it's like, nah, this is 100% zombies. Like, you coming in here, you better be a zombie. Which you had the mentality of like, oh, we don't have Blaine, like Donnie's like, well, we don't have Blaine's list of clients, so there's no way we can, like, you know, take them from him and kind of get business started. Which you have Blaine's dad being like, well, go out there and just scratch somebody, which is kind of like he's willing to spread the epidemic even more. I guess him and Donnie haven't heard the news about like, oh, people are on the lookout for zombies. Obviously, like last episode kind of put in perspective that like there's a message board out there too. And obviously we still got to find out who was the one that actually killed Anna, her brother, and Wally. You know, that's still a big mystery. I'm sure that's going to be one of the big overarching storylines. Maybe the same person is connected to Vivian's husband dying, because remember, that's what's kind of sparking her to do this, because her husband was killed too. So, and also finding out about this whole Natalie situation is something we have to deal with. Like, is Natalie, because the thing is, like, the last time like anyone saw Natalie, like I think it got brought up last episode, is that she was being pulled off by Vaughn. So what if she became something else, or maybe someone else did take her? Maybe she is being held captive somewhere else, or I don't know. We'll just have to see where that storyline goes. I mean, I'm sure for Major, it's like at the very least, this is the one last. I want to do something good, you know, before I end up either dying in the sense of like, oh, my memory's going away. I want to at least remember long enough to be able to help Natalie, and then like, you know, whatever happened to me afterwards happens to me. So. And then also we have the whole situation with Caddy, because the fact of the matter is she's slowly piecing things together, because apparently there was a plane crash that had a body in it. This little girl's body, much like the other victims, had brains in their stomachs. And then she starts correlating like, oh, she was originally from here in Seattle. And it's like, oh, where did she come from? Oh, the boat party incident. And it's like, oh, all those other people died. And she starts asking Ravi, it's like, oh, did those bodies have brains in it? Which obviously Ravi's blind, like, oh, nope, sorry. She's like, oh, I guess my theory was wrong. And then obviously the whole situation with her like being like, oh, let's go out and eat. Which at that moment that happened, I was like, oh, don't do that. That's going to complicate things. But then I was like, my thought was originally like, okay, obviously he's going to start dating her, and then obviously Peyton and Blaine kind of do their own thing. It's like, so like kind of going back to what happened last season, because at that time like Peyton hadn't come back yet, and Ravi kind of moved on, and so I thought that kind of thing was going to kind of happen again, as I brought up earlier. As we know, as I was talking about earlier, and as we know from watching the episode, didn't go down that way, but still. I'm very interested to see where like her story, like this is at least two characters like within the, like obviously we have Detective Kavanaugh trying to figure stuff out, as well as Caddy, but the thing is like if they work together, they might start filling in some blanks. I'm wondering is, when it's all said and done, will it be a situation where, because I thought, you know, it might be a situation where Ravi stays close to her, trying to lead her off the tracks, but then what if it's a situation where she's actually playing Ravi? Maybe it's a situation where it's like, oh, Ravi, actually I know you're lying about something, I'm just trying to figure out what it is. But for now it seems like she's on the up and up, but it's definitely going to be interesting seeing that go forward. Overall, very, very good episode with some very interesting developments that I'm interested to see how they develop. Like, I'm curious to see if the third cure will be like activated within Blaine's system by next episode or not, or obviously, or will they wait a little bit longer? Be very interested to see. Can't wait to see what the next episode has in store for us. And now moving on to this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., a very, very good episode where a big theme of this is kind of like belief and believing wholeheartedly in what you believe and not kind of straying from that. In one case, you have the whole Fitz and Daisy situation. Daisy is pleading to him. It's like, no, this is not who you are. The fact is, you're not this person that, that Madame Hydra has made you into. You're a very good person. The fact of the matter is, this isn't your world. She's lying to you. But Fitz is so steadfast in his belief that he doesn't believe her. Like, anytime it's like, oh, she kind of bad mouths Madame Hydra a little bit, like Fitz even hits her, like she's been through, like they torture her, they beat her up just for the sake of trying to get information out of her and stuff like that. And you even had to kind of go back before I go forward, like the point is we have Gemma telling Mace as well as Ward the whole truth, which like you had someone like Coulson telling her not to do that, because it's like, the only reason why I believe you is because I have the fragments of my memories that aren't 100% settled in. So like, obviously this world is, its hold on me is cracked. So obviously some of the fragmented memories are coming through, but no one else is fortunate enough to have that. I'm the only one that does. So Gemma kind of didn't want to listen, because to her it's like, these are all ones and zeros, they don't matter. She tells him the truth, but then it ends up bringing up something interesting, because it's like, oh yeah, you know me from the outside world, this is what Mace is saying. He's like, oh, but do you actually know me? Am I married? Do I have kids? Blah 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 blah. Where am I from? And he, basically he's like, the fact of the matter is, everything I've ever done, basically everything that's happened to him in this world, his memories of this world and everything, he's like, I've lost a lot of good people, so you're trying to tell me that nothing? Which Gemma's like, I didn't mean to offend. It's just because and it's understandable why she believes that, because she's like, they're ones and zero, they don't matter. But the fact is, that shows you like kind of the same mentality, I guess, that no matter, even if this is a fake world, it's real to him, and that you're not going to shake his belief in everything that he sacrificed. Everything he's lost and all the people he's lost, but everything that he's fighting for, that's real to him, and that's all that matters. And so it's kind of the same thing with Fitz. It's like, to him, this is the world where everything kind of fits perfectly. So it's the world that he was made for, so really quickly, kind of tugging along that line, is the fact is that Radcliffe ends up talking to Daisy and telling her about what Fitz did, which, just much like Gemma, she's like, I don't get it. There's no way Fitz would be able to do that. Which Radcliffe is like, truth be told is, anyone is capable of. It's not just Fitz. Any one of us is capable of that. You change the right thing. Like, he's basically saying, like, one sentence could change everything. And it seems like in this world, that one thing that changed, it's Fitz's dad, which it should have known, because they went through, much like Mac, they brought up his daughter and everything. So obviously that'd be a story element. But then his dad, and it's not like his dad's some high-ranking official. Like, his dad just works there. Like, I don't know what his actual position is, but it's like, he even refers to Fitz as sir. So obviously, like, he's on a lower position. I mean, obviously being who he is, not only the Doctor, but being so important to the Madam Hydra, obviously, like, Ada would put him at the top of the list of, like, the ranking of, like, who's kind of got superiority amongst, Hydra and everything. And basically, it seems like that's the one thing that led things to go down this path for Fitz. Because as we know, his dad, from what we've heard, his dad's a bit of a D-bag, but that's what this whole world is. And I'm not really sure if I 100% really brought that up. Like, because, I mean, obviously it seems like everything kind of worked a little differently. I mean, this is just him kind of reinferring something that's already been kind of established a little bit, kind of setting it more grounded. Is that it's not 100% Ada that's done everything to this world. It's like, she didn't do all of this to this world. She changed a few things in a few people's lives, and it had massive domino effects to the world, changing the crew, the main characters, like, their lives changed the world this dramatically. So, I mean, as we know with May's situation, because she didn't kill that girl went off to kill a whole bunch of other people, and that led to the whole situation of like, oh, like, Inhumans, people with powers and stuff, bad, so let's just, which obviously it's a problem in the real world, but obviously there's a lot more support for it. And I guess if it wasn't for that incident happening, like May's decision, it changed it so that now, Hydra had a leg to stand on, like, oh, we'll be here to eliminate the Inhuman scum that's plaguing this world, that causes massive damage and deaths and stuff like that. So But it's not even just those. You do have even Gemma having a change of heart. Like, obviously, she sees everything as ones and zeros until she sees Mac with his little girl, and it changes everything. Because it's like, she knows Mac doesn't have his little girl in real life, but to be here in this world, and it's like, here she is, and he's so happy. Like, I thought about, like, oh man, Mac wouldn't want to leave. But you're looking at it now, it's like, maybe Gemma wouldn't want him to leave, because the fact of the matter is, this world, you know, he has his little girl, and it's like, even if she's ones and zeros, that's still his little girl, because to him, that she's real, that she's it. Like, and who am I to really take that away from him? Because that's kind of something, you know, at the end of the day, because Ward kind of posed the question like, well, how do you know that this world is fake and that the world you're remembering isn't the fake one, that basically you woke up from the fake world into the real world, that this is it? Because to me, like, at the end of the day, you know, because what this also comes down to is, what does it mean to be alive? Because these programs have their own histories, they have their own lives, their own dislikes, their own personalities. They have a life of their own. And even though they're programs, does that make their lives any more insignificant? No, it doesn't, because they have just as much right to live as a normal person. Like I said, you get into the whole semantics and everything about just because they're machines, does that make their lives worth less? Because, you know, it's kind of like, there's that Dr. Seuss book. I can't think of its name. They even made it into a movie and everything. Well, multiple occasions they made it into a movie. But it's basically about the elephant who knows that there's a little world here, but no one else is willing to believe it, because everyone wants to believe that their world is all there is. I mean, granted, we know that's not the case, because like the Marvel universe is filled with multiple dimensions. So it's kind of like very egotistical to just think your world is the only one that's important. Like, obviously this one is a little bit different because it is a program, but the fact is, obviously different worlds and different dimensions work in different ways. So it's like, this is a world of its own. These people who are here, they are alive in a sense. Like I said, like, you can play devil's advocate to it, but that's kind of where I believe. And so I understand that mentality, and that's something I think Jim is kind of slowly learning throughout this episode. And like I said, it brings a very interesting perspective to things, to the point that she didn't even want to bring Mac along, because she's like, no, Mac, well, we can't let him go, because obviously if he gets hurt, something happens to him in this world, it happens to him in the other world, which, you know, is true, but it's like the same thing applies to you and everything, but you're still willing to go. But Ward's like, are you sure this is about him and not just about his little girl? And Gemma's kind of not really giving a response, but that's what it is. So it was kind of interesting that she did end up telling Ward the truth about himself and everything, and also told Coulson about it too. She's like, Coulson's like, I don't know, why do you have such a problem with Ward? It's like, I do kind of get this like itchy feeling like I got hives or something. She's like, well, yeah, you did like crush his chest with your cybernetic arm on an alien planet. It's like, oh no, I would explain it. Ha ha ha. Little jokes, you know, little ha ha wink wink nudges with the whole, I got hives. But nevertheless, I mean, because to me, this is also supposed to show the perspective that no matter how messed up their lives are in the real world, they've lost a lot, it's still arguably a better outcome than this world, because at least in that world, there is some freedom, there is choices. In this world, it's this matter of like, you know, you're kind of abiding by Hydra's rules. Which, side note, since I used the word choices, that kind of made me remember, I totally forgot about it. We ended up having Madam Hydra talking to Daisy, basically offering her, it's like, okay, you tell me where your real body is in the real world, I can give you Lincoln in this world. That's what you want more so than anyone. Have a happy life, have a family of your own. The fact of the matter is, I'll make you forget about that world and this world. You just live a happy life here and everything. Which Daisy ends up responding basically like, and I think what's an interesting perspective of being like, people, the fact is that she wants to give people what they want. All these things that she's changed, she's like, I'm doing it for their sake. Like, the fact of the matter is, this is what people want. And Daisy responds like, people getting what they want isn't always the right thing. Because at the end of the day, what you want isn't always what you need. You look at Fitz. I'm sure on some level, Fitz always, as we can see, Fitz always wanted to be with his dad, to have his dad in his life, the dad be proud of him and everything. And obviously in this world, we see him giving him advice, obviously taking him down a dark path of being like, oh, we are, you know, you're a man of action, not a man of sympathy. We don't need kind of weak will stuff like that. It's like, no, I don't know exactly what you do, but you do important work, son. Don't let me down. Be the man that I knew you can be. Basically, don't let even a woman kind of pull you down to stop being who you need to be. Like, you know, kind of, you know, evil douchebag advice. So, and we see that that's a case where it's like, nope, that's not what he needs. I mean, granted, you have a case like Mac, and the fact of the matter is that Mac has this little girl, so it's like, you know, like, there's ups and downs with each one, but it's like, but like I brought up last week's episode, like, even with the case of this world being what it is, that it kind of gives you what you want, at the end of the day, it isn't your world. Like, obviously, like, this is someone else's world. It's not your life. This isn't where the people, like, like I brought up last episode, Yo-Yo's still waiting for Mac. It's like there is a world and countless people out there counting on them and needing them to come back. So this isn't just about indulging, this is a situation where, like, it's one of those situations where as a hero, you can't be selfish. You have to do what's right for the world. It's like the world needs you. The world needs all of you to come back to help deal with this whole situation. And the kind of interesting thing I found about it was the whole Madam Hydra's response as to what she gets out of this. Because, like, Daisy's like, oh, you're trying to do all this out of the kindness of your heart. It's like, what do you get out of this? And for her, it's just like any other person, a choice. Because for once, now all the strings on her have been cut. I know I made the comparison of her to Ultron before, and even more so with that. Was that line even in the movie? I feel like it was. It might not have been. I don't remember. I really like that line, like, oh, there's no strings on me. But nevertheless, within the context of it, it applies to this too, because it's like she's no longer the puppet she was before, that she's able to act and do what she wants to. Now she has a free will of her own in a sense. So it's like that's what she's gained from all of this. This world has given her a chance to be not just some, like, she kind of was able to reinvent herself as someone else, that just like, oh, this powerful leader that people have to listen to and respect. And the fact of the matter is, she lived her life as as Ada, always following someone else's orders. Now people have to listen to her. And also in this world, she has Fitz. She has love, everything she couldn't have as Ada, because no matter how important she was to Radcliffe, all she would be to him, and I'm sure in her mind, is a tool. And I'm sure looking at Agnes is a reminder of that. Like, especially when she found out originally that Agnes was, like, that she was based around Agnes's design. So that means she wasn't even unique. It's like, oh, I'm just like a carbon copy of someone real. So it's like now she's given herself a real identity, a real purpose. So another interesting thing that popped up in this episode was the fact is that they gave May the same drug that Mace uses in the real world to get his powers. Obviously, in this world, he is an Inhuman, kind of the thing he wanted to always be, because he wanted, respects Captain America and everything. He wanted to be a hero like him. And, he respects Inhumans and everything. So he, was envious, because the fact is he had to get his powers. He had to become special by injecting himself. But in this world, he's just a natural born Inhuman. But May ends up taking those injections. So obviously flipping the script a little bit like that, which is a thing in itself. It's like the last thing you want is someone as skilled and as deadly as May having superpowers. You don't want that. That's cause for concern, especially when she's playing for the bad guys team. But we also had the reappearance of a character I did not see coming. Like, obviously, it's like, oh, we got to rescue somebody. I was like, okay, so who is it going to be? It's like, oh, it's probably going to be a familiar face. And then the character turns around. I'm like, oh, it's you. For a second, I forgot his name. I was like, oh, I'm pissed. I can't remember your name. And then I was like, please say his name. It's like, Trip. I'm like, right, Trip. Was not expecting that. If you don't remember, the last time we saw Trip is obviously when he died back in, like, what was like at the end of the first half of season 2, like during the whole Raina and, well, at the time, Sky, but Daisy situation where, like, the Terrigen crystal exploded and Trip died that way. So, I mean, it was like a quick moment, but I'm pretty sure that you had Gemma kind of being happy about it, because she's like, wait, Trip? It's like, I was like, dude, I wasn't expecting that. That's so cool of you doing that, because it's like, I mean, obviously they have like a large cast that could easily pull from characters that we don't see that often, but it's like, it was just so cool to bring that character back like that. And obviously, I mean, I'll get to the end of the episode soon enough, sorry, but obviously he's still alive, so obviously he's going to be playing a role going forward, so. But there was this moment in the episode where May was kind of like, okay, like, hey, like, Mace has run off into this building, and like Fitz looks at Madam Hydra and she's like, yeah, basically they use one of the jets to like basically bring the building down. And May goes in there because Fitz kind of was like, well, who cares? Like, I was like, oh, there might not be, we don't know if there's anyone in there or not, which Madam Hydra's like, well, who cares? And Fitz goes along with it. And so it seems like when it happens, the building's going down, like obviously you have Coulson in there, Trip in there, as well as Mace, and like everyone's in there working to get all the kids that are in there out. and Mace is struggling to keep the building up. And even Mace, they're like, whoa, wait, what's going on? Wait, there's kids involved? Like, I didn't know there were supposed to be kids in here. And then to have, like, seeing Mace, because in her mind, she's like, Mace, you're a terrorist thug. And he's like, if I really was, you'd be dead right now. If I was a bad guy you think I am. So it's just it's a situation where May just was in a position where, like, she was falsely believing, like, oh, they're doing the right thing. Because the thing is, it's something I didn't think about to this episode. It's like, well, I mean, honestly, till just now, like, May's main motivation for taking out Inhumans, because to her, she had that one experience with an Inhuman and all the damage it caused and the damage it did to the world. Because of that one thing, it caused her to have a distrust of all Inhumans and not like them and look at them as terror. It's like, oh, you want to support Inhumans and you yourself, leader of S.H.I.E.L.D, is an Inhuman? It's like, you disgust me type of situation. And it's like, it's sad she has that mentality, but it's because of that one moment. I mean, that's enough to change someone's mind when you see, like, you made this decision not to kill this particular person and they went off and hurt a lot more people and threw the world into chaos and leading to things being the way they are. And in her mind, it's like Hydra wants to get rid of the Inhuman scourge. And so it's like, why not go along with him? Because the Inhumans are dangerous and need to be stopped. But then seeing Mace, seeing who he was, and what the fact is he was willing to save those kids, and that's another thing too. I'm sure that affected Gemma too, because it's like, Mace, you're real, but all these kids, they're not. But still, she was there helping anyway, because at the end of the day, even if they are just ones and zeros, that you are here and they are here, and just because you're in a different world doesn't stop you from being the hero that you are. And in this case, Mace was being the hero that he's always been on the inside. Like, he always, because as we know, like he brought it up earlier. I mean, in the past, not earlier. But a couple episodes back, he brought up the fact is the reason why that famous photo that showed him being a hero, he was running for his life because he was scared and he tripped. He never actually saw the woman that he got photographed, like, apparently, like, saving. So now he got a chance to be the hero, he wanted to be, obviously, with the building crashing down upon him. And, it seems that he is dead. Mace is dead, because obviously on the outside we have Ada looking at him, like looking at the machine and everything, and she has this sad look in her face that I don't know which way to interpret that. Either it's like because she's slightly becoming more human. I mean, granted, maybe on the inside I would have believed that, but here I don't know, because I think more so than anything it's her program. Well, I think there's a little bit of her that is kind of becoming a little human, that is caring about people. So it did almost seem like she was sad. Like, either it's because, like, well, I didn't want it to end like this. I wanted you to live out your life and everything and be happy. Did she not know it worked? Like, or did she not know that it worked like that? I would assume she knew that it worked like that. If you die in that world, you die in the real world. Or maybe she didn't know that. Or maybe, maybe it's a bit, well, also another possibility is just it's her programming kicking in to be like, oh, she was built to protect people. So maybe that bit of her programming is kicking in where it's like, oh, I wasn't able to protect you. So she's a little sad. I mean, because that's a big part of this too. It's like that, I think that's the biggest, like, concept of this episode is a change of heart. And, like, you even see Fitz, even at the end of the episode, you see Fitz kind of, it still, like, even when he's with his dad's all proud of him and everything, but it almost seems like Fitz isn't 100% okay. Like, he's starting to change too. It's starting to seep in. Obviously, we see May having the biggest change of all, because she's like, you're an Inhuman, right? She's like, right. Yeah, but it's like, if I had my powers, I'd be one of the most powerful ones. She's like, I will bring this whole building down. She's like, I hope so. And throws down a Terrigen crystal, and you see Daisy kind of smiling and May kind of smiling and nodding at her, and she's obviously going to become Quake, which is like, yes! So that means May's kind of switching sides. Obviously, May's not fully into, because for her, at the end of the day, no matter what it is, it's like, we're here to protect people. It's like, obviously we have to go about harsh things when people are, it's like, oh, you're aiding terrorists. That's what it's like when you're helping an Inhuman, you're helping terrorists. But these are innocent kids. It's like, yeah, we pull them in and stuff if they're Inhumans, but they're just regular kids that we're willing to bring down a building. Like, I'm sure Fitz, as well as Madam Hydra, knew what was in that building. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. You would think, at being at the top of the organization, you'd kind of know. Some things, we're getting a little bit closer to finding out what exactly it is that Fitz has been working on, the weapon that will end Inhumans, because Trip ended up having some information that he ended up stealing from them. So we'll probably be finding out in the next episode more about that. But we also have, with Mace gone now, this kind of leads, obviously, who's going to lead Shield. I mean, obviously, you might have someone like Gemma being like, "Oh, why not Coulson?" But Coulson would probably be like, others would be like, "Well, I'm sorry, but he's just a civilian." Probably next person in line might be Ward. I don't. That'd definitely be very interesting. But I'm also curious to see if this will change Gemma's perspective on things going forward. Like, obviously, with Fitz, will she? I'm sure she hasn't given up on Fitz. She definitely hasn't, but even she realizes that he's not the person that she knows and loves. So it puts things into different perspectives. So also, like, the fact is that Mace died for ones and zeros. Like I said, she's still warming up to the possibility of, obviously, it's more than that. There are more than ones and zeros, but, there's probably a part of her brain that's like, he died trying to protect something that didn't matter, but for him, it did matter. And at the end of the day, like, as a hero, isn't that what you do? You die fighting, protecting those who need to be protected and saving lives. And that's what he did, so... Does that mean his death was for nothing? I refuse to believe that. So, very, very, very good episode. Like, I always feel weird saying that when the episode is like super sad like that, but very good episode, and I'm very excited to see what goes on in the next episode and with these new developments heading our way. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.